FBI hostage negotiation. It's such an intense thing. Again, they have to be dealing with whatever the hostage taker is and trying to influence them in a way to get them to essentially do the right thing. One of the big aspects that happened when Chris Voss, the writer of Never Split the Difference, was a negotiator is that there was a big shift before Ruby Ridge, Waco, and some of those things that happened in the early 90s in the doctrine of the FBI hostage negotiators, where previously it was much more logical, and then they realized like logic isn't working, and you can't logic somebody, out of the situation.
Yeah.
And so they started looking more at these questions of like, okay, what methodologies do we use to connect with the hostage taker and be able to influence them with irrational influence. So a form of charisma. Chris Voss often talks about this concept of tactical empathy. And again, this idea of making somebody feel heard.
Oh, wow.
And like kind of understood.
Yeah.
Even though you might not really, you're creating the illusion that they're being heard through certain verbal patterns that the FBI has developed.
Wow, that's so funny because again, like I see this in movies. I don't know what an actual hostage situation is like or negotiation is like.
Yeah.
But you see a lot in a lot of TV shows or movies. The cop or the negotiator is like saying, "Hey, are you hungry? Do you want?
Yeah.
Like, how are you feeling right now?" It's always like the empathy. You want a slice of pizza? We can get you a pizza right now. Like, I know you've been in there for 9 hours. You must be tired and thirsty. Like things like that. Just
Exactly.
kind of break down the barriers. But the empathy is a way to get in there.
Because, they're working on this deeper layer. Obviously, there's the surface level negotiation of, again, trying to figure out the logistics of the thing. But it's the underlayer that is really shifting things. You can't logic people. Logic gets people to think. Emotion gets them to act. In the book, there's a lot of major revelations in it, but a few of the techniques that I think people can take from it and understand, like kind of how this applies. So, again, you're using kind of tactical empathy to kind of get into people's minds. I think that you're using the word tactical because it's a cold empathy. Right? You don't want to feel compassion for a hostage taker, but you need to know how they think.
Yeah.
Right. Voice is incredibly important because most of these things are happening on a phone call. And Chris Voss talks about, first of all, he has an incredible voice if you ever watched any of his podcasts.
Okay.
But he talks about two types of voices that he often has to come to play with. The default voice is the playful voice.
Wow.
And that's the voice that you just kind of go through like kind of life with most of the time.
Yeah.
And again, it's expressiveness. It's the idea of like, oh, warmth, fun.
Hi.
Enjoy, right?
Yeah.
But in a hostage situation, he shifts something he calls the radio DJ voice.
Gosh.
And
That's
the core
amazing.
aspect of the radio DJ voice is that it's slow, it's calm, and the tonality always ends down.
Oh.
So it's calm authority. So because you don't want to get things too crazy, but essentially you're using the voice to lull the hostage taker. And so when tonality goes up, it's like when tonality goes up, the Valley Girl accent has that problem. Like
Is that why it's so annoying?
a little bit, right? Because everything sounds like a question.
Yeah.
And when tonality goes up in a vocal inflection, it's a little bit of a thing of psychological, I don't want to say submission, but like you basically kind of like, is that okay?
Yeah.
You kind of,
Or is that okay?
exactly.
Down.
Right. So that by going down, it creates this finality and this authority. So that's the radio DJ voice. Wow. So the whole thing is like hostage negotiations take a long time and they go slow. And essentially, the longer this hostage negotiation goes, actually, the easier it is to close.
Really?
Yeah, because people slowly kind of get worn out.
Oh, okay.
Then,
Makes sense.
in terms of the actual verbal techniques, one of the biggest things they do is this concept of verbal mirroring, where anytime somebody says something, you say what they said back to them, like the last 3 words.
The last 3 words?
Yes, but you say it radio DJ voice.
Oh, you mean the last 3 words?
Silence. It gets the person, it makes the person feel heard,
Yeah.
and they keep talking. And it gets them
Interesting.
on a roll to start oversharing.
So it's like you're being present, right?
You're
That's
being
that-
present. Yeah,
right.
you're applying
Yeah.
Olivia Fox-Cabane's concept of presence.
Got it.
And you're creating this bubble where the person feels heard.
Wow.
And you're creating that kind of illusion by mirroring the things they're saying back to them,
Interesting.
right? And they even did this weird study where like they found that when waiters do this, as opposed to like waiters like being super bubbly or whatever, when waiters just mirror what people are saying back at them, they get higher tips. For some reason, I don't know, it makes being felt heard, I guess, it touches something in our brains.
That's a total life hack for you waiters out there. Just repeat like, hey, would you like, what would you like? 2 hot dogs? 2 hot dogs?
2 hot dogs.
1 soda? 1 soda? Like,
Yes.
just repeating it.
Yes.
Interesting. That's so cool.
It
You'll
makes-
get higher tips.
It makes people feel heard,
So crazy.
right?
I love it.
Then he has this great idea called the accusation audit, which is before you go into any negotiation, you write down every single insult or complaint they have about you, and then you use it before they do. Listen, you're really going to think I'm a jerk, but I really would like
Interesting.
to switch my seat.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
for whatever reason, taking the accusation on yourself and saying it first allows people like, oh, okay, yeah, well,
Like
no, you're not a
it's-
jerk.
Yeah, he understands me.
He
knows where I'm coming
disarms. It disarms. Like,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
really gonna hate me, but
from. Yeah.
I really need help with this
Right.
problem.
Right. And we do that all the time, but I never understood why we did that. Right.
For sure, you think we're an evil corporation, but we really need to close this court case,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you take whatever the arrows they have, and you actually disarm them by using them first.
Interesting.
This idea of labeling is very, very powerful. A lot of times when people are having conversations, they're not looking for you to solve their problem, right? Again, they're looking just to be heard. And so being an emotional psychic, using phrases like, it seems like you're really worried right now. The power of labeling, what it does, labeling diffuses negative emotions. So when somebody tells you, like, it seems like you're very stressed right now, it does something in people where it diffuses the negative emotion in them. Because again, it gets acknowledged.
Yeah.
It's like when people are angry and express the anger to somebody, afterwards they're like, oh, I don't feel angry anymore. So labeling has this ability, like, it seems like you're very sad right now. Right? You're being kind of an emotional psychic. Even if you're wrong, it's kind of doing this thing. The person feels witnessed, they feel heard. And so labeling diffuses negatives, and then labeling also reinforces positives.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
It seems like you're very happy about this deal.
Oh, got it.
Right? So it strengthens the positive, but it diffuses the negative.
Got it.
And so research shows that the best way to deal with negativity is to observe it without reaction and without judgment. And it diffuses the emotion. So the act of labeling people's reactions and the emotion, like basically giving it attention, witnessing it, and letting people know that you've witnessed the thing is enough to diffuse the emotional charge in them and then keep the hostage taker calm.
Yeah. No, I feel like this applies to so many different fields besides hostage. I mean, hostage negotiation is like a really extreme.
It's
version of
extreme
it.
version.
But
Yeah.
like, say you're a therapist, right? You know, and just literally just listening, being present, and just mirroring what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's such an
And-
effective way. Yeah.
And essentially, the ultimate goal of whether you're doing it right or not is that it's getting the person to say, "That's right."
Ooh.
And he talks about it. It's not yes. It's actually better to get people to say no.
Really?
And we're not going to go into that, but like, read the book. It's great. Because no gets you to actual objections that you can fix. People say yes for a million different reasons, and yeses don't mean. People just say yes all the time.
I
But if somebody
see.
says no, you now have something you actually work on.
Wow.
But getting a person to say, "That's right," which means everything you did up to this point, the labeling, the verbal mirroring, the accusation audit, it means the person feels heard,
Heard, acknowledged.
acknowledged.
Right.
And they found when they switched to this sort of doctrine and the FBI, when they're doing hostage negotiation things, they were getting better outcomes. Even though the negotiation of the logistics themselves didn't really change much, but having the hostage taker feel heard, I guess developed this connection, this bubble with the hostage negotiator, and allowed them to, again, get a better outcome. And so
That's wild.
that's why personal charisma, I think, in a lot of ways, is a lot more intricate, because again, it's a two-way street. It's more of it's a duet. You have to create this bubble. You have to kind of make the world melt away and make the person feel like they're the only person in the world with you at that moment in time. And that's when personal charisma is fully functioning.